Have you ever wondered about the most horrific execution during the Russian Revolution? It is said that the Soviet Union experienced numerous purges and executions to maintain control over the population, resulting in extensive bloodshed. However, there was another execution that shocked the world and left a deep impact on the people of Russia. Despite being renowned for her beauty and charitable work among the poor, Elisabeth was brutally murdered in 1918. So, what happened to Elisabeth? And why was she executed during the Russian Revolution? Stay tuned to find out more. The Soviet Union witnessed numerous purges and executions that maintained control over the population. During Stalin's regime, he conducted the Great Purge, which severely damaged the Red Army when he ordered the execution of several generals before the Second World War. Prior to this, Russia experienced extensive bloodshed during the Civil War as the Bolsheviks fought for power, resulting in the execution of the former ruling family, the Tsar, Tsarina, and their children in the new revolution. Another member of the royal family, Elisabeth, the granddaughter of Queen Victoria and the older sister of the last Russian Empress, Tsarina Alexandra, was also killed by the Bolsheviks in 1918. She was known for her beauty and charitable work among the poor, but suffered greatly in her final days. Elisabeth was born on November 1, 1864, as the second child of Ludwig IV, the Grand Duke of Hesse, and Princess Alice, who was the daughter of Queen Victoria. She had connections with many royal families across Europe and was raised modestly by her family. Her upbringing did not include the luxuries of servants, and she and her siblings were assigned various chores. During the Austro-Prussian War, Elisabeth's mother took her on trips to visit wounded soldiers. As her first language was English, she was fluent in it. Unfortunately, tragedy struck when Elisabeth was 12 years old, as her mother and younger sister Marie died due to diphtheria, causing great distress. Elisabeth, however, survived, as she was staying with her grandmother. The loss of her mother and sister left a deep impact on her, and she felt like it was a horrible dream she would never wake up from. Elisabeth was renowned for her beauty, and was considered a valuable asset in forging alliances with different countries and royal families across the world. Her cousin, Prince Wilhelm of Prussia, fell in love with her despite being older and writing many love letters, but Elisabeth rejected his proposal. Many other princes also attempted to marry her, including Frederick II, who Queen Victoria found to be a suitable match, but Elisabeth declined. However, the Grand Duke of Russia, Sergei, the son of Empress Maria Alexander-Offner of Russia, successfully won her heart, and they bonded over the losses of their parents. He proposed to her in 1883, which shocked Queen Victoria as Elisabeth had rejected so many other proposals. The wedding was arranged and took place on June 15, 1884, in the chapel of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Elisabeth, who was previously known by another name, became the wife of Sergei, who later became the Governor-General of Moscow. Despite not having children of their own, Elisabeth and Sergei loved and cared for their nieces and nephews, and hosted lavish parties for the children on their estate. However, Elisabeth played a significant role in the marriage of her younger sister Alex to Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia. She encouraged Nicholas to pursue Alex and convinced her sister to convert to his religion before accepting his proposal. Tragically, on February 17, 1905, Elisabeth's husband Sergei was assassinated in the Kremlin by Ivan Kadyrev. Elisabeth was devastated by the loss and refused to cry, but could not shake her grief. She spent days before the burial praying ceaselessly at her husband's tombstone and wrote, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." She understood the heart and soul of the Gospel's words. On the eve of her funeral, Elisabeth demanded to be taken to the prison where Kadyrev was being held. Her love for her husband was evident in her actions, and her grief was palpable. Upon being brought into his cell, She questioned Kalirev about the reason behind her husband's murder. In response, he stated that he killed Sergei Alexandrovich because he perceived him as a tool of tyranny and sought to avenge the people. He urged her to set aside her pride and repent, promising to plead with the sovereign for her life and having already forgiven her. Prior to the revolution, she had already adopted a path of forgiveness in the face of unimaginable pain and violence, with the hope of ending the cycle of bloodshed. She set an example for society by calling upon people to live in accordance with the Christian faith. However, Kalirev remained unrepentant and willing to die for his cause, believing that his death would serve his moment better than the death of Sergei Alexandrovich. Consequently, he was sentenced to death and welcomed the sentence with satisfaction. After the death of her husband, Elisabeth wore mourning attire and sold her extensive collection of jewelry and luxury items, including her wedding ring, as a means of diverting her life towards charitable work. She became an abbess, opening a convent and additional chapels in a hospital, where she and her nuns worked tirelessly to aid the poor and sick. Despite her efforts to help those in the slums of Moscow, she could not prevent her sister, Serena, from falling prey to the influence of Rasputin. Princess Elisabeth herself eventually met the same fate as her sister, being brutally murdered in 1918. Elisabeth, along with Grand Duke Sergei Mikhailovich and several other princes and workers, was arrested and exiled to Kattekberg on orders from Vladimir Lenin, just like the Tsar. They were later taken to Alapayevsk in May 1918, where they were kept under heavy guard in a house on the outskirts of town. These individuals were seen as representing the monarchy by the revolutionaries. On July 17, 1918, a Checker officer and Bolshevik workers arrived at their place of imprisonment. They confiscated the prisoners' money and announced that they would be moved to a factory compound later that evening. The Red Army guards left and were replaced by Secret Service officers from the Checkers. Later that evening, the prisoners were awoken and transported by carts to a road leading to the village of Silisa, where they were then taken to an abandoned mine pit. The prisoners were brutally beaten, and Princess Elisabeth was thrown into the pit first. It is unclear whether she was already dead or severely injured when she hit the bottom, but the others were also thrown down to ensure their deaths. The Checker officers then threw grenades down the shaft. While one victim died from the grenades, the rest were killed by the beating and the fall. The Checkers claimed that Elisabeth and the others had survived the fall, which is why they threw a grenade. They alleged that Elisabeth and the others were singing a hymn from the bottom of the mine, so a second grenade was thrown, but the singing continued. However, the Checkers then threw wood down the shaft and set it on fire, burning all of those at the bottom, including Elisabeth. On October 8, 1918, officers from the White Army came across the skeletal remains of Elisabeth and several other individuals. Elisabeth's body was found in good condition, despite the fact that it had been exposed to the elements for 3 months, which suggests that she had died from either starvation or her injuries rather than from the fire itself. The results of an autopsy showed that Elisabeth had died as a result of injuries she had sustained in a fall from the mine, but not before she had used the veil she wore as a nun to drive away the head of a prince. After that, Elisabeth's body was transported to Jerusalem, where it remained until it was eventually canonized as a saint in the Russian Orthodox Church. Princess Elisabeth of Hesse, who was Ryan's character, was a very kind and generous person. She did a lot of good deeds for other people. After her husband was killed, she publicly pardoned the person who did it and then renounced her support for the imperial cause so that she could become a nun. Despite the fact that she was not a danger to anyone, Lenin subjected her to a gruesome execution because he saw her as a representation of the monarchy. This tragic end was not something that Elisabeth deserved. Thank you for watching this video about the most horrific execution during the Russian Revolution. Elisabeth's story is one of tragedy, resilience, and hope. Despite experiencing unimaginable pain and loss, She dedicated her life to helping others and promoting forgiveness. Elisabeth's story is a reminder of the importance of compassion, empathy, and kindness, even in the face of adversity. If you found this video informative, please consider sharing it with others and subscribing to our channel for more thought-provoking content.